where we can intensify our own personal sadhana. And these are the days also, like once you go to the temple or like in a nearby community, we see so many devotees. We see wonderful abhisekam, and that's where we get a lot of inspiration from each of the activities. So it's a really feast for the eyes. That's we call netra, feast for the ears, because we observe on that day more and more hearing the pastimes of the Lord, holy name of the Lord, and feast for the heart and feast for the soul as well. So I'm sure you all had a wonderful day, and today we have a special topic and a special devotee. Of course, he's not new to us. So today we have requested our Anand Prabhu to share some of his realization in our common group. And like we have named our Bhakti Vrikshas into the deities of the Vrindavan, like Radha Govind ji, Radha Raman ji, Radha Sham Sundar ji, Radha Gopinath ji. So we thought that it's also important for all of us to know about these deities. Who are they? Or what kind of pastimes they have performed, and how these deities have reciprocated with the devotees of the Lord, and how we should really approach the Lord. So we thought that, okay, maybe the leaders of the respective groups, they can really share about their presiding deities. So today we have requested Anand Prabhu to share something of Radha Govind ji. So are you all looking forward to it?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. So just we'll have 2 minutes kirtan, then we'll hand it over to Prabhuji. Jaya Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Radhe. Jaya Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Radhe. Jaya Radha Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radhe. Jaya Radha Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radhe. Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha Gopinath Radhe. Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha Gopinath Radhe. Jaya Radha Sham Sundar Radha Sham Sundar Radhe. Jaya Radha Sham Sundar Radha Sham Sundar Radhe. Jaya Radha Ramana Radha Ramana Radhe. Jaya Radha Ramana Radha Ramana Radhe. Hey Jaya Radhe Jaya Krishna Jaya Vrindavana Shri Govinda Gopinath Madana Mohana. Jaya Radhe Jaya Krishna Jaya Vrindavana Shri Govinda Gopinath Madana Mohana. Madana Mohan Radhe Madana Mohana. Madana Mohan Radhe Madana Mohana. Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Shri Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. हरिनाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय, श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय, समेत भक्त वृंद की जय, निताई गौर प्रेमानंद, हरि हरि बोल. Okay, so then I would hand it over to now Anand Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Am I audible, Prabhu?
Prabhuji, we can't hear you.
Am I audible, Mataji?
Yes, now you're audible.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, you are not audible, Prabhuji.
No, I'm just reciting some prayers.
Okay, okay, fine. So I'll get started because in the interest of time, this is on Sri Govindji, Radha Govindji, the name of our Bhakti Vriksha. And I don't know what struck Sudhir Gopal Prabhu that, he changed the theme, or he gave this wonderful theme. And as I was, digging deeper into this topic, I think it's a beautiful theme. I mean, I just felt there's so much to share. I mean, there is a wonderful series of videos by His Holiness Indradyumna Maharaj, where he has covered this in 12-part web series. And this web series is very compelling, unlike the web series that we know, right? It's very, very compelling web series. And I could just scratch the surface in this entire series that Maharaj has given. It's very, very, very detail oriented. It'll be a poor man's rendition, hearing it from Maharaj. It's going to be just a poor man's rendition of what he covered in those 12 series. I couldn't go through the 12, but I've tried capturing as much as I could. And we'll start with I'll share my screen, but mostly it'll be, there's not much in the slides. I'll be speaking. Please let me know once you're able to see my screen.
Yes, bro, we can.
So this is our dear Sri Radha Govindji, and the whole subject is about him. So I'll keep him at the center. So before we start with this very, very, very interesting, subject of the pastimes of Sri Radha Govindji, let's take a look at the basics, right? In terms of the stages of spiritual advancement. Like, it's important also to go through the slide just so that it sets the context for what we'll discuss going forward. Right? So there are 3
Can you
stages.
have it in the slideshow mode?
Yes, yes, Prabhu. Yes, is it visible, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. Let's keep this away a bit. So the 3 stages are Sambandha, which is essentially our original, establishing one's own original relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it's about understanding that we are soul, Lord is, we are eternal servants of the Lord, right? He's the true enjoyer, and we need to give him pleasure and joy, right? It's essentially about understanding the Sambandha part, our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the deity of worship here is Sri Radha Madan Mohan, whose mercy is needed for us to be able to develop this stage. And if we go through the scriptures written by Srila Sanatan Goswami, who's the Acharya, who symbolizes the Sambandha Gyan, we have to follow his footsteps to be able to get this Sambandha Gyan. And once we go through that, we'll progress in this path. The other one is Abhideya, which is essentially acting in one's constitutional relationship. Now it's more about executing devotional service, right? And you need to follow the path laid out by Srila Rupa Goswami, who has described this in a lot of detail in Nectar of Devotion, which is also called Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And we're following his footsteps. And if we approach Sri Radha Govindji, we are going to discuss in a lot of detail today, we will hopefully, and with his mercy of the Sri Guru Parampara, we'll be able to relish this execution of devotional service. The last is the Prayojan, where everything has to end in terms of not end. Everything is a journey, but we need to be able to relish develop ultimately the love of Godhead, right? Which is the Prayojan, and the deity is Sri Radha Gopinath, and the Acharya whose footsteps we need to follow, who himself actually followed the footsteps and of Srila Rupa Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami. So that's the Prayojan. So it's important to have these stages clearly set in our mind, so that when we talk about these acharyas, we are able to appreciate the philosophy that they represent, the following the instructions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how they have actually made a big difference in everyone's lives here. Right? So that understanding is very, very important. Now, to get started, there's a very interesting shloka from Chaitanya Charitamrita 1.19, which is more like an invocation on the 3 deities we just saw, and this is very well written by Kaviraj Goswami, and it goes like Tina Thakura Gaudiya ke kariye chena atmasat Tine Racharana Vandan Tine Mora Natha. These 3 deities of Vrindavan, Madan Mohan, Govinda, and Gopinatha, have absorbed the heart and soul of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, followers of Lord Chaitanya. I worship their lotus feet, for they are the lords of my heart. So with this invocatory prayer, we'll get into the depths of the pastimes of Sri Radha Govindji. So I'll probably go into a little bit of details here, and we can actually see how much we can cover, how much of ground we can cover today. So Govindji was basically carved out 5,000 years back by Krishna's great grandson, Vrajanabha, and it was under the instructions of basically Uttara, who's basically the mother of Maharaj Parikshit. And this happened way back 5,000 years back. And like we lose all the best things over a period of time. So time is also a destroyer in the material world, while it's an enabler in the spiritual world. So over time, these deities were covered, and we lost access to them. And that's where this pastime starts, where
beloved Srila Rupa Goswami, who's basically in Mathura, who's been basically sent by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to actually go to Vrindavan and carry out certain instructions. And the three most important instructions were actually studying the revealed scriptures. The other one is finding lost places of worship, which is what we're going to discover now. And the other one is basically reinstating deity worship. So these objectives were given to Goswamis, and they were sent by Mahaprabhu to be stationed in Vrindavan. And that's where, that's the setup. That's the, the whole place where it all starts to happen. Now, Sanatan Goswami is also there in Vrindavan. And during this time, Sanatan Goswami has found his worshipable deity, which is Madan Mohan. Now, Rupa Goswami, Srila Rupa Goswami is essentially, he has this habit of doing a Vrindavan parikrama, right? And he takes a long tour of Vrindavan. And when he takes this parikrama, one of the things that he's always hankering for is, when will I get my Ishtadev? When will I get access, or when will I get to see the darshan, get the darshan of Shri Radha Govindji? So he's hankering, and in this particular day, his hankering is unbearable. He's really, really hankering when he's going to see his Ishtadev. And during this time, it so happens that he basically rests, or he stops by and basically sits under a tree, because his hankering is unbearable. He's longing for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's association. He's not seen any letter from him. He's not had his direct darshan over a period of time, because Mahaprabhu is in Puri and Goswamis are here in Vrindavan. Now, during this time, he's meditating hard. And during this time, in one shot, he writes what we call Pratham Chaitanya Ashtakam, which is found as part of Stavamala. So he pens that in one shot, and his longingness, his hankering is increasing. And during this time, it so happens that as the shloka ends in the Stavamala, he says that, when will Mahaprabhu be visible to my eyes? So his prayers are ending with that mood. And during that time, there is this cowherd boy whose name is Govind Das. Very coincidentally, he is attending to the 500 cows which Srila Rupa Goswami has. Now, it's interesting to note that the number of cows, because he's a detached soul, and how come he's having so many cows? Now, Mahaprabhu had given an instruction to Srila Rupa Goswami in a letter that you need to take care of sadhus also in Vrindavan. So, as part of his job as one of the key ministers with Hussain Shah in Ramkeli, he amassed a lot of wealth. He did give up a lot of wealth, but he took some portion of wealth for the upkeep of sadhus. So he had these cows as a result of that wealth. Now, these are the cows which were tended to by Srila Govinda Das, who's basically one of who's the key cowherd boy. And when he looks at Rupa Goswami really, really hankering under this tree, he kind of understands what's happening. And then he says that, and Rupa Goswami mentions that he's really hankering for his Ishtadev. And that's the time he breaks this very, very good news. The good news is that he spotted one of the cows out of this 500 cows, which basically she often goes to this hill and empties its udders completely. The milk is drained out from her udders, and the cow almost always is in tears. So, and that's the time Srila Rupa Goswami becomes ecstatic. He now says that, I think I found my Ishtadev. And why does he say that? The reason he says that is, in the language of Braj, in Braj Bhasha, Go means cow, and Vrinda means
meditation. Govinda means meditation. So because a cow broke his meditation, he knows that he has found Govinda, right? So that's the mood. And he immediately gets very happy. He rushes to the spot. And that spot is called Yoga Peeth. Why it's called Yoga Peeth is because if Lord, the position where Lord either permanently sits or stands is called Yoga Peeth. And getting this wonderful news, he rushes towards that hill where the cow has often drained its udders. And when he goes there, he makes a big announcement. He makes this announcement for all the strong, able men to come to that spot to be able to retrieve Govindji. Now, the beauty is that the cow, which has often gone there, has been draining the milk for years. It's not been just one or a couple of days or a few hours. It's been for years. And therefore, the whole area had become very muddy and soft, right? And what so happens is that when all the Brijvasis come and meet there in that hill, they start to dig up that place. And as they start to dig up, since it's very moist because milk has always been drenching that place, they essentially use some of the equipment, some of their hands to excavate that area. In doing so, they have to go for 5 stories. It's documented that they go down 5 stories to get the first visible darshan, first darshan of Govindji. So as they go get Govindji out, Govindji is basically completely, in mud, a lot of stones around him, the small fine stones. And as they bring him up, there is such a mood of ecstasy in the entire Vrindavan. People are ecstatic. They are so happy. And the beauty is the cows, which basically are in Vrindavan, they are also so happy. And they start to dash towards that place. And the bells around their necks make a huge noise. And they come up to the place. And they cuddle each other. People are so ecstatic that Govindji is about to give his darshan. So during that time, when Govindji is raised up, and he is now brought up, and that's the time Srila Rupa Goswami gives his full dandavat. That's the first time he's looking at his Ishtadev, his dear Lord, and he's offering his full dandavat. And after 3 dandas, one danda is seems 24 minutes. It happens that Sanatana Goswami gives his dandavats, and that's the time many Brahmins and Chaturvedi Brahminical ladies and Chaturvedi Brahmins, they come to the spot. Now, it's documented that when Govindji is brought up, there is a 4-hour ablution or abhishek of the Lord. And the details of that is described in a literature called Krishna Janma Tithi Vidhi. So there's a lot of detailing there. A very interesting aspect there is that in that 4 hours of ablution or 4 hours of abhishek, there's no mention of blowing of conch shells. And that's interesting. The reason why there's no mention of conch shells there is that 5,000 years back, when Krishna left Vrindavan for Mathura, that time Akrura came to accompany to get them, Krishna and Balram. So Akrura blew this conch to signal that he's taking Krishna and Balram for a match against the wrestlers, which Kamsa had organized as in Mathura. So Brajvasis were heartbroken ever since, because they correlate the blowing of conch shell with the separation of Krishna, and they are not prepared to accept that at all. So there are still many temples in Vrindavan where conch shells are not blown. So that's one of the notes that came out. And all Brajvasis who gather in that place, they with unanimously sing Shri Govinda Prakata Hoila Rupa Dware. So Lord Govindji has given us darshan through the wire medium of Srila Rupa Goswami. So he is the agent behind this darshan. So they sing praises of Rupa Goswami. And Rupa Goswami says why he, so the earlier rendition we heard was in Braja Bhasha, that why go and when the Govinda becomes the Ishtadev name of Srila Rupa Goswami. So here Rupa Goswami says, the Lord appeared near a cow, go, and it was indicated by a cow while I was meditating on Gopal Gayatri, while I was facing the sun. So therefore, the name Govinda. So this is a more Sanskrit based explanation of why the name Govinda, why Rupa Goswami kept the name Govinda, Govindji, and he's as he is fondly called. As Lord was completely done with this Abhishek, a lot of flowers and offerings were brought. And again, one interesting note here is that alongside flowers, water, essences, many interesting condiments, there was this usage of colored powders. So the reason why colored powders were used in Lord's service that time was because Lord appeared in the Vasant Panchami, which is indicative of Holi, and Brajavasis play Holi during that time. So the colored powders were also used in service of the Lord. Rupa Goswami quotes this very interesting, very powerful prayer from Sripad Shankaracharya, who has penned the Govinda Ashtakam. And I'll just share my screen. If let me know if you can see this. Is it visible? So this is verse 4, which
no, Prabhuji.
Not yet, Prabhu. No, no, it's not visible.
okay, I'll share. Yeah. So this is verse 4 of Govinda Ashtakam. So it goes like Gopalam Prabhu Leela Vigraha Gopalam Kula Gopalam Gopi Kelana Govardhana Drita Leela Lalita Gopalam Gobirnina Gita Govinda Sputanamanam Bahunamanam Gopi Gochara Duram Pranamata Govindam Paramanandam. So worship Govinda, who is supreme bliss, who is the protector of the world, who made his advent in the world as Gopala through his Leela, who is the protector of the race of Yadavas and of cows, who made the cowherds happy by lifting up his Leela, the Govardhan mountain, where the gopis used to play, whose name Govinda is uttered clearly by the cows, who has many names and who's beyond the reach of the ignorant. So this is something Rupa Goswami quotes quite a bit, so I thought I'll bring that up. Now, as time goes by, it so happens that Rupa Goswami, of course, he's completely detached soul, and he makes his living in a small hut, and which he very love, with a lot of love, he creates for Govindji, made of leaves, wood, mud and grass. And after bathing the Lord, he would do Shringar, and the Shringar's name is called Prakrita Parivesh. So what it means is Srila Rupa Goswami would use all natural, all that comes from Prakriti to basically decorate the Lord. So it will be something like flowers, beads, then Vaijanti flower beads, creepers, Gunjamala, etc. And then he would offer him Amrita Keli, which is sweet rice, and Sattu. So Srila Rupa Goswami was day in and day out serving Srila Radha Govindji with a lot of care, a lot of attention, a lot of love. And at one time he penned basically a letter to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saying that the days are passing like blinking of eyes, and I am spending a lot of time with Govindji, but I need help because I'm not able to essentially follow your other instructions of being able to write literatures. So, so he asks for help from Mahaprabhu. So Mahaprabhu that time, he advises one of his intimate followers whose name is Kashishwar, to go to Vrindavan. So Kashishwar is a little puzzled and he asks Mahaprabhu, why do I need to go to Vrindavan to see Krishna when you are Krishna himself? Right? So he's not happy going there because he's losing Krishna's company for going to Vrindavan. So that time Mahaprabhu takes out a long worshipped deity of his, a very dear deity of his, to Kashishwar, saying that you can take this deity. This deity is identical to me. So that's a powerful statement. And that deity's name is called Gaura Govinda. And you can find both Sri Govindji and Gaura Govinda deities in Jaipur today. So you can have their darshan. And Kashishwar would actually worship them together when he went to Vrindavan, since he was happy that he was carrying Mahaprabhu as this deity alongside with him. So later what so happened is that Mahaprabhu sent Raghunath Bhatta Goswami to Vrindavan to serve Govindji. And that was the time where he passed a very specific instruction to Raghunath Bhatta Goswami to essentially build a small temple, and he called it essentially a house of gold, right? He so built a small house of gold for Govindji. That was the instructions given to Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, and Raghunath Bhatta Goswami did follow his instructions through a disciple. He created a small temple. It was not made out of gold, but it was definitely made of the heart of heart layer. You know, it was made of basically Raghunath Bhatta Goswami's heart of gold, right? If it's not same as the metallic gold, his heart was as good as gold. So it was made with that, with a lot of love and care. And this temple was worshipped from 1535 to roughly 1540, 1550. So that was the time. And unfortunately, in today's day and age, 10 years back, this temple was raised by a physician who acquired that property. And unfortunately, it's not available for a darshan. Of course, he has been taken to task and put behind bars, but we lost a very, very important heritage of our Gaudiya Parampara. So, and during this time, a very, very, very interesting pastime happened. And this pastime was about a Brahmin from South India who came all the way to Vrindavan to have darshan of Sri Govindji. And that time, the instruction to Raghunath Bhatta Goswami was that he has to give classes in Bhagavatam, and he was going about giving classes in Govindji's temple, which was created by his own disciple. And when he was taking this class, he was giving a class on Gopi Geet, Canto 10, Chapter 31. So that was under discussion, and some wonderful pastimes were getting discussed about Lord. And that time, it so happened that this Brahmin was curious. He was a curious onlooker. So he had Govindji's darshan, and then he was paying attention to the whole class. Everybody was absorbed in the class, rapt attention. And people were immersed. Some of them were having, getting goosebumps. Some of them had their eyes full of tears. Even the trees were listening to that class. It was so impactful, that class. And at that time, it so happened that this Brahmin saw a platform where there was a Vyasasan where Srila Raghunath Bhatta Goswami was giving this class. There was a slightly raised asan where someone was sitting, right? So he was curious, who was this person? Who was this gentleman? And he asked tapped on the shoulders of one of the devotees who were in that class, asking him, and this devotee was himself so mesmerized by the whole class. So he took his time to respond back to this South Indian Brahmin. And he finally got his attention and asked, who's this person who's there little raised in a raised platform? So then he said, he's Srila Rupa Goswami. Okay, then as he was looking at the entire class, looking at Sri Govindji, who was also absorbed in the class, he saw that everyone was so, absorbed, and except Rupa Goswami, there was no emotion coming from his exterior.
So it so happened, he thought, let me go figure out what's happened. And then he went closer to Srila Rupa Goswami. And that was the time he took a small piece of cotton and put it under the nostrils of Srila Rupa Goswami to see if he's even breathing, because there was no reaction coming from outside. So for one danda, as I said, one danda is 24 minutes. There was nothing happening there. The cotton didn't move. And just about the expiry of 24 minutes, Srila Govind Dev Ki Jai, and Srila Raghunath Bhatta Goswami was ending his class. At that time, Rupa Goswami breathed for the first time. And when he breathed, the cotton under his nostril burst into flames. Now, Acharyas explained that basically this when Rupa Goswami heard Gopi Geet, which is about separation from Krishna, his heart was full of pain. He was feeling the separation of Krishna, and that manifested as fire in burning the cotton. So that's how Acharyas explained. So very, very interesting pastime. It's happening in exactly the same place where Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Raghunath Goswami, Bhatta Goswami, and all devotees, all Vrindavan Vasis were there. Very interesting pastime. And as time went by, during 1500s, and there's a lot of trivia I'm missing, but one interesting trivia here is, which is all of this is well researched. All of them have Shastric references. So there's a mention that Humayun, who was the ruler that time, he had actually waived off any tax for Srila Rupa Goswami's cows. They could graze any place in Vrindavan, and there will be no tax applied. And following that lineage, Akbar, who took the throne just after Humayun during the period of 1500s, he took the whole reins at age of 14. And as we know, Akbar had this Navaratans, and Todarmal was one of them. He's also Krishna Bhakt, who was serving as finance minister for Akbar. And then there is this mention of Raj Man Singh, right, who was one of the generals, trusted generals of Akbar, who won 67 battles for Akbar during, and he has built a lot of trust with Akbar. So he would trust him with anything. And interestingly, that time, there was an uprising, there was a rebel happening in West Bengal. And Akbar wanted to quell that. As a ruler, you want to have authority. You cannot withstand any uprising. So he immediately called out his trusted general, Raj Man Singh, to travel to West Bengal. So Raj Man Singh was in Lahore fighting a battle, and he got this instruction from Akbar. So when he was going back, wanting to go back to West Bengal, he thought he will get some of his armed forces from Mathura. So he goes via Mathura, and that time by the time, Sri Govindji temple is very, very famous. So people come to take darshan from all parts of India, and Raj Man Singh was no stranger to that. So he goes to the temple, and he takes darshan of Govindji, and he secretly prays before Govindji that if I am victorious in this West Bengal, in quelling this uprising there, I will create a big temple for you. This, interestingly, is documented by one of the scribes there in Manav Prakashi Prabandha. So that document has the entire details of the vow which Raj Man Singh took in Govindji's temple. And and he also paid his respects to Srila Rupa Goswami. So the moment he saw Srila Rupa Goswami, he recognized that he was one of those prominent ministers in Nawab Hussain Shah's palace with the name, I think, Dabir Khas. So he was so popular. All these Vaishnava Acharyas, they were, even when they were attending to material duties, they were exemplary there. They were very, very, very intelligent. So he knew that Rajman Singh knew that Srila Rupa Goswami was a very, very effective minister. And when he saw him as a saint at this time,
he knew that he's taking blessings from someone he reveres, right? Based on his past knowledge. So when he takes Rupa Goswami's blessings, and he emerges victorious in quelling this uprising in West Bengal. And as he goes back, he meets Akbar. And Akbar that time is also known to be very secular, very liberal, very forthcoming, very, someone who respects all religions. So when he meets Akbar, he tells about his secret vow that he took in Govindji temple. And Akbar immediately sanctions what we say 135 bighas of Jameen. So it's about 33 hectares of land that is sanctioned by Akbar. And he also gives him 30 lakh rupees. 30 lakh of rupees that time, imagine 1500s, fortune. It's basically 1 year's budget of a temple that was given immediately. And it so happens that with all this funding and all this allocation, Rajman Singh goes towards Govindji temple, again meets Rupa Goswami, because he knows Rupa Goswami is the prevailing authority in that area. So he goes, meets him. So he talks about, earlier when he spoke to Rupa Goswami, he never talked about this secret vow. So this time he makes this vow public. And when he makes his vow public, Rupa Goswami is not interested. He says that, he uses this word, which is again very interesting, that Sri Govindji likes the nature of Vrindavan. So he likes the Prakriti. He likes that kind of atmosphere. But then, Rajman Singh persists, right? He is adamant that he needs to have a temple constructed because he has taken a vow. And typically vows that we take before the Lord, we don't want to break them at all. So after a few, pursuals, Srila Rupa Goswami agrees to it. And it then takes birth of a creation of a massive temple, a temple which basically is a signature of architecture, a temple which goes 7 stories, built in red sandstone, which is actually red sandstone instead of marble was used that time, because red sandstone was seen as a symbol of the wealthy, the rich. All the Maharajas used to have their palaces in red sandstone. So that was used. And the whole temple took 30 years to be constructed, with 7 floors and a lot of subfloors between these floors. A huge, huge temple. And unfortunately, Srila Rupa Goswami doesn't live to see the temple fully constructed. And that time, Srila Jiva Goswami, he first time goes to the temple after it gets constructed. And there is a beautiful Ashtakam that he sings, which is called Govinda Mandira Ashtakam, which is also documented, where he sings an Ashtakam on Govindji temple, which was constructed that time. So, all, as they say, all good things sometimes come to an end. We can't, the laws of providence, we can't understand. So, and that was the time when things take a turn not so for the good, a very painful journey that happens. I think Prabhuji is nicely presenting the remains of that temple, the Govindji temple. So only 2 floors you'll see. We'll get to the details of why you see just the 2 floors. So on August 28, 1667, Aurangzeb, who basically comes in that lineage, he was a tyrannical ruler. We also, we don't have to, I don't want to run a class on Aurangzeb here, but we know that he's a tyrannical ruler who demolished a lot of Hindu temples. So he created a decree on August 28, 1667, which is called a Black Decree, which says we need to demolish the temples to spread Islam with great urgency. And that was the time, he was in Mathura and he was offering namaz in one of the mosques, and he was just coming out and he saw a bright shining star, and he was bewildered. He was checking, what is this bright star that I'm seeing? In fact, one of the ministers goes to Aurangzeb and tells him that it's not a star, but these are 51 Mahadeepas which are lit on the top of the Govindji temple. And to add salt
to the injury, one of the ministers goes and whispers in his ears that so he tells him that your great grandfather or grandfather Akbar sanctioned 30 lakhs to be used for building this temple. So he gets completely enraged. How can an emperor build a temple larger than a mosque, right? And that too from a ruler coming in Muslim lineage. How can he spend the money to create a temple larger than mosque? And that triggered him off. And many Krishna temples became, they fell directly in his line of target. And he instructed his soldiers to rush to Vrindavan to destroy this temple. And when he gives this orders, one of the Rajput soldiers there in the assembly, he gets a whiff of this, and he essentially takes to his horse, rushes towards Vrindavan, and there is lots of details. I'm just oversimplifying this whole pastime. The name of the horse is also mentioned. It's called Pavan, and Pavan is also called wind. And he takes Pavan along with him and rushes towards Vrindavan. And he starts to knock the door of the head priest, whose name is Sivaraj Goswami. And he tells him that Sri Govindji temple is under threat. Aurangzeb has asked for a demolition, and Sivaraj Goswami is just groggy. He's just woken up, and he's just coming to terms with this news, and he immediately starts to rush. What he does first is he secures all the manuscripts, right? And this is divorced from the fact that if somebody gets a news of this urgency, they will try to secure all the gold, silver, diamonds, all the materially important stuff. But Sivaraj Goswami, he secures the manuscripts first, and then he secures the deities. And basically, he's planning, what should I do next? And during that time, the forces are coming thick and strong towards Govindji temple. And what happens is bloodshed. So many Vaishnavas get slaughtered during that. So I don't want to get into the details of that. So that's the time Aurangzeb basically, so there's a lot of carnage that happens, a lot of slaughtering that happens. Many Vaishnavas lose their lives. So this is the time when Sivaraj Goswami secures the deities, rushes towards Radha Kund, because that's a place which is completely, it was obscure at that point in time, right? Radha Kund, it's not Radha Kund, sorry, it's called Govind Kund, a small formation near the temple. And it so happens that, after a few days, as the demolition is on, it takes 2 months for the soldiers to knock down 5 floors, right? And they are about to destroy the remnants that you see, which Prabhuji has very nicely presented. And that time it so happens that Aurangzeb, who's manning the whole, he's personally interested in seeing this temple getting destroyed. So at that time, there is an earthquake that happens in Vrindavan, and there's a swarm of bees that attack Aurangzeb. So as he's attacked, his body's puffed with all the bites that he sees. And then he asks for help. And then he asks, is there a pious Muslim man who can tell me why this has happened to me? And then this man tells him that you have actually ordered for destruction of Radha Govindji, who was very dear to so many Vaishnavas there. So yeah. So and then Aurangzeb gets a taste of what he has given others, and he immediately stops the destruction of the rest, and that's the remains that you see. Such a beautiful temple, and wish we could have seen the entire 7 floors. So that's the entire history behind Govindji temple. Now here's a very interesting pastime, how deities were secured.
So there was, as we saw, that these deities were secured in a kund near the temple called Govind Kund. And Sivaraj Goswami, who essentially, who's the chief priest of the temple, he makes a plan. Now, there is soldiers all across. They are on night duty. They are 24/7 watching what's happening around them, because they are sure that some of these deities have been kept out of the temple, and they want to make sure that as soon as someone tries to rescue these deities, they can go kill them, right? And there is a lockdown that is imposed during that time, and we are not strangers to lockdown. We know how lockdowns operated. Nobody can get out of the house. And when no one can get out of the house, these soldiers can actually go inspect all these kunds, all these places, to see if there is anything there, and they can go destroy it. So that time, Sivaraj Goswami, the chief priest of the temple, he makes a very smart plan. What he does is, he takes a pot, a lot of pots, puts cow dung inside it, and then puts sheep wool on top of it and lights them up. So to ensure that they are able to walk in the dark. Now, as he's getting closer to the kund, the Govind Kund, where the deities have been secured, he puts a lot of opium on the fire. So the moment the opium gets burned, and he has secured himself. Himself and all the people who are aiding him, they are secure. They have kept their faces completely masked. So the soldiers are not able to take care of the place, because the opium is all over. And they secure the deities. So as they secure the deities, they put them in a bullock cart, and there are two drivers. One's name is Pandeji. So much of details available. All of it is verifiable information. So now this bullock cart has to move towards Rajasthan. The reason is because there's a lot of patronism for Krishna. All Rajput clan are essentially Krishna Bhakts. They have this lineage. So there's a lot of trust that has got built. So the plan is to shift the deities to Amer, place in Rajasthan. And while this whole transit happens, the deities basically taken through Radha Kund. And Radha Kund probably was a 40-minute drive from Vrindavan that time. And that time it was a very obscure place. I mean, no habitation, a lot of thick forest, very difficult to penetrate. So it was taken from that direction. And even in doing so, every day, the deities were given proper service. They were given a good, ablution, abhishekam, offerings were done, but not in pomp and show, like no rubies, no golds, no diamonds, just plain, as Rupa Goswami put it very nicely, prakritik parivesh. So history repeats itself, right? Rupa Goswami said that Lord likes nature and it comes back again. And even during that time, Shivaraj Goswami, he basically finds a lot of patronage from Gujars and Jats, who are physically very strong. And he does a very smart thing. He, even during the process of taking the Lord, shifting him out of Vrindavan to Rajasthan, even on the way, he gives Diksha to many of these Gujars and Jats so that they continue to serve as Krishna Bhakt and protect the Lord. And every day, Lord will give darshan during the transit, and everybody loved Govindji. So no trespass. There is nobody who would leak the information. There are no moles in this entire clan of people. And very interestingly, Lord would give darshan under a banyan tree, where he was serving, or he was giving darshan under a pompous temple. He was giving darshan under a banyan tree with a very, very minimal paraphernalia around him. So this is this wonderful pastime, and there is a lot to be shared, but I am also wary of the time. Beautiful pastime. There is 8 sessions more which I have to cover, but some other day. These pastimes are so nectarian. So I'll stop here and thank for all the opportunity given.
Thank you very much, Anand Jairam Prabhu, for so beautifully sharing this wonderful pastimes of Radha Govindji. As we heard, Radha Govindji is the presiding deity who represents Abhidaya, the process of Bhakti. And all these Goswamis, like especially here Rupa Goswami, how he beautifully took care of the deity, how he brought up the deity, and how he built so nice temple for the deity. And then not only that, how the devotees of Vrindavan, they took care of the deity from Vrindavan to the Jaipur. So if you go to the Jaipur right now, Jaipur is called also Gupta Vrindavan. Rajasthan, Jaipur is called Gupta Vrindavan because all the original deities of Vrindavan, they are being taken from Vrindavan to like through the Radha Kund to the place of Jaipur. And now we can see in the Raj Mahal of Jaipur and also some of the surrounding places, right? We have the Radha Govindji temple, Radha Damodar temple, Radha Binodilal temple, Radha Madhav temple, and there is Radha Gopinath temple. But Radha Raman deity is a very small, very beautiful. So Radha Raman deity, he didn't leave Vrindavan. He is there in Vrindavan only. But the one more deity of Radha Madan Mohanji. Radha Madan Mohanji also was in Jaipur. But then the princess of Jaipur king, she was very much attached to the deity. And once he got married into the Karoli prince, she said, no, I want to take the deity also with me. You see, this is the attachment, that a devotee have towards the deities. And then she really took the deity to Karoli. So now we see the original deity of Radha Madan Mohan is in Karoli. So sometime we should visit all these places like Karoli, Jaipur, and we can remind ourselves the sacrifice the devotees have done, the love and devotion of all the Goswamis, and these are the deities carved by, as we heard, the Bajrana of the great grandson of Lord Krishna himself, and we can really reciprocate our love. Okay, so I think we are running out of time. So yeah, so
plan and take us to those places, Prabhuji.
Hari Bol, yes,
Right.
pray.
Because once we hear all these things, so Prabhuji, feel like going and seeing all this place,
Yes.
beaches, places.
Definitely, we should go to Vrindavan. We should really go to Jaipur. We'll plan with the blessings of the Lordships, with the blessings of Pracharyas, and with all your enthusiasm. Definitely, we'll go sometime. Definitely. Okay, so maybe we'll continue the series of our deities of Vrindavan for the next couple of weeks. So for the time being, we'll pause it and we'll, from our heart, let's pray to these deities so that they can really shower their choicest blessings upon us. And Rupa Goswami is really meant to really source that devotion, to develop that chanting of the holy name. How should we develop the taste for chanting of the holy name? He has really shown that. So let's pray to these Goswamis and the deities so that we can really bring that love into our own heart. So can we just start one round of chanting, Prabhuji, quickly? Thank you, Prabhuji. Okay, let's chant Panchatattva Mahamantra. Let's take shelter of Panchatattva and start chanting.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Srivasadi Gaur Bhakti. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda